Every morning, I sit in front of Jennifer's photo and say a prayer. My wife Jennifer was a doctor. She was the daughter of the biggest hospital in the state, Miller General Hospital. That was my wife, Jennifer. We met through an introduction. It was set up by a professor from a university hospital. I remember being awestruck when I first saw Jennifer. I had never seen someone so beautiful. Her well-defined features and her refined upbringing. Even her title was without fault. All I could think about during our first meeting was how much I wanted to see Jennifer's smiling face, which seemed a bit tense. In the end, we started dating. I was quickly liked by her parents and they pursued our marriage as soon as possible, which I hardly had a chance to refuse. Our marriage proceeded smoothly, and Jennifer and I got married, feeling somewhat left behind in the swift proceedings. This doesn't mean I didn't love Jennifer. I believe she married me because she had some feelings for me as well. Our married life was fairly enjoyable. We were both busy with our jobs as doctors, and it was hard to find time just for the two of us, but being in the same profession allowed us to empathize with each other. I truly believed our busy yet peaceful life would continue. Jennifer, who was supposed to be taking a nap at the hospital, passed away in her sleep in the fall of our second year of marriage. I was dumbfounded by the sudden loss. Heart failure due to overwork. That was the diagnosis. It's been 2 years since then. I still live in the apartment where Jennifer and I used to live together. I also work at Miller General Hospital. The only change in my life is Jennifer's absence. This change is slowly gnawing away at my heart. Despite this, I keep living each day as if nothing has changed. Then one day, I was called to her parents' home. Jennifer's family, the Millers, have been a line of doctors for generations, and originally, it was supposed to be Daniel, the eldest son, who would take over the hospital. However, Daniel ended his own life. This happened when Jennifer was still in high school. Next, it was Jennifer's turn. Being a direct descendant, Jennifer was to become a doctor and take over the hospital, or marry a doctor who would take over. I remember crying when Jennifer told me this story. It was so heart-wrenching. The thought of how much pressure she must have carried through her life is chilling. Just imagining it sends shivers down my spine. Jennifer forced a smile and said, "It's not as bad as you think." I had never seen such a sad smile before. I had sworn to myself that I would protect Jennifer at all costs. But Jennifer is no longer here. Probably tonight, her parents will ask me to pretend the succession talks never happened. Jennifer has a younger sister. It would be best if Samantha, the second daughter, marries a doctor. That's what I've been thinking ever since Jennifer passed away. I believe her parents feel the same way. Excuse me, what do you mean? In the grand reception room of the mansion, I found myself letting out a foolish sound in front of my in-laws. "We want you to remarry with Samantha, our second daughter." My father-in-law, James, the current director of the hospital, said these serious words to me. To me, these words were unbelievable. Glancing quickly at my mother-in-law, Kate, I saw that she, too, was looking at me with the same serious expression as James. This was no joke. Samantha herself was not present in the room. Did she agree to this? Even if she had agreed, why me? My head was swirling with various thoughts, and I started to feel a bit sick. This isn't a bad deal for you, right? We really want you to take over the hospital. It's a family-run hospital. I had heard rumors about the disputes over succession, but I never expected them to resort to such measures. I'm fine just working at the hospital. Taking over, that's not really for me. I tried to gently refuse, but James firmly grasped my hand across the table. We can't let the hospital fall into the hands of distant relatives. It seemed like a minor family feud. In essence, Jennifer and I didn't have any children yet. Some relatives argued that it would be unacceptable for me to remarry, have children with another woman, and then have those children take over the hospital in the future. Before such a scenario could unfold, they demanded I be removed from the hospital to secure the position of the next director for their own son. If you marry Samantha, all that noise will disappear. I've always thought of being a doctor as my true calling. Miller General Hospital, with its excellent facilities, is the perfect workplace for me. If possible, I want to continue working here without being ousted. But even if you approach me with such a proposal, what does Samantha say? Trying to free myself from James's grip as casually as possible, I drank some coffee to calm myself down. Both of them were looking at me with hopeful eyes. If Samantha agrees, you're okay with it, right? James, taking my words as consent, smiled happily. It was the same smile he had when he insisted on marriage with Jennifer, and I felt a chill down my spine. That's not what I mean. My words seemed to fall on deaf ears. I remembered Jennifer also used to be frustrated with her father's stubbornness. Anyway, we'll arrange a meeting with Samantha, so keep tomorrow night free. Everything was moving at a breakneck pace. Stopping James now seemed impossible. All right, but please, make just one promise. Please respect Samantha's wishes. I made eye contact with each of my in-laws as I spoke. They said of course, but I didn't trust them. As I left their house, I knew I had to come up with some plan. The next morning at the hospital, James, in high spirits, told me he had managed to contact Samantha. I was invited to dinner that evening at a fancy restaurant favored by James. Unable to refuse, I accepted. It would be the first time in a long while that I'd see Samantha. Since our wedding day, we had hardly met. Whether it was for Christmas or New Year's, she never seemed to visit her parents' home. She mostly ignored calls from Jennifer, keeping her distance from her family. I was surprised not only that contact with Samantha had been made but also that she had agreed to attend the dinner. In any case, everything depended on Samantha's decision. I was confident she would refuse. I was sure of it. Thinking about being treated to a delicious dinner at a high-end restaurant lightens my mood a bit. For a moment, the image of Samantha frowning and glaring at her parents flashed through my mind. Normally, I never leave work on time due to overtime. But tonight, it must have been arranged by James, the hospital director. Everything went smoothly. After going home once to change into a suit, I spoke to Jennifer's photo before leaving. I'm going to meet Samantha. Jennifer's smiling face in the photo seemed to cloud over slightly, but maybe that was just my imagination. I'll be back soon. I found myself speaking to Jennifer, who was no longer there. Upon arriving at the high-end restaurant, my in-laws were already there, greeting me with wide smiles. It's a miracle we got in touch with Samantha, and she even agreed to meet you. I think she's not entirely opposed to the idea. Wait, you mentioned the remarriage to Samantha. I was taken aback, having assumed the subject of remarriage would be broached only after I had met Samantha face to face. Jess, we've discussed your remarriage with her. Her willingness to show up tonight must mean she's considering it. It's the position of the next hospital director's wife, after all. James laughed heartily at that. It was hard to believe that the prospect of becoming the next hospital director's wife could sway Samantha's heart. An uneasy feeling started to set in. As I was contemplating this, the staff at the high-end restaurant announced Samantha's arrival. At that moment, a palpable tension filled the private room. The door opened smoothly, and Samantha walked in. Good evening. It's been a while. Her skin was as pale as Jennifer's, but there was something unhealthy about it. It seemed like the color of skin that hadn't been exposed to sunlight much. Her slender jaw and sharp eyes were nothing like Jennifer's. I remember Jennifer telling me that Samantha and their deceased older brother looked very much alike. Kate, who had been in high spirits until just a moment ago, seemed somewhat distant towards her daughter, whom she hadn't seen in a while. Even my usually cheerful James seemed tense, his smile gone. "It's been a while since the wedding, hasn't it? Good to see you again." I apologized for not attending Jennifer's funeral. I was unwell. Samantha hadn't attended Jennifer's funeral. I had thought their sibling relationship was poor, but hearing she was unwell was new to me. "How are you feeling now?" "I'm much better now, thank you for asking." Samantha smiled faintly, but her eyes were not smiling at all. It didn't seem like she was here to agree to remarry me. "Samantha, about the remarriage we discussed over the phone. It's not a bad deal, right? If you and Michael get together, you could take over the hospital." Seeing Samantha's faint smile, James seemed a bit relieved. He began to talk enthusiastically. Once he started presenting the benefits of remarrying me, he couldn't stop. Samantha silently listened to him. James's momentum was so overwhelming that there was no chance to interject. "That's enough. I understand the selling points." She cut off James at just the right moment. "I hardly know Michael. Even if I were to marry, we would need time to understand each other." Hearing Samantha's words, I couldn't believe my ears. Her tone suggested she was seriously considering marrying me. In stark contrast to my astonishment, James wore a broad smile, confident of his victory. "Of course, why not live together for a while? That's the best way to get to know each other." At James's suggestion, Samantha turned to face me. "Michael, what do you think? Is that okay?" Being stared at with her pale eyes, I found myself nodding before I knew it. It felt like a frog being stared down by a snake. And so, the cohabitation before our marriage with Samantha began. A few days later, Samantha knocked on my door with a small bag and 2 laptops in hand. She was dressed more casually than when we met at the restaurant, with her long hair simply tied back. "Thank you for having me." Her light greeting left me feeling strangely. It didn't feel real at all. "I've kept Jennifer's room empty for you to use, and here's a spare key for the place." I showed Samantha to the room and handed her the key. "By the way, Samantha, what do you do for work?" I was about to mention my frequent overtime when I suddenly realized I knew nothing about Samantha's job. "I mostly do day trading from home, and a bit of gambling, I guess." I was taken aback and couldn't respond immediately. Samantha lived in a completely different world from Jennifer, who dedicated her private time to patients and medical work. This premarital cohabitation seemed fraught with challenges. But this was just the beginning. Living with her, I was constantly surprised. Left to her own devices, she wouldn't leave the house for a week. Her diet consisted of 1 meal a day, either instant food or takeout. She never cooked. "There's no point in pretending, right? This is how I live." This was supposed to be a cohabitation with marriage in mind. I couldn't help but ask her bluntly if she didn't want to present herself better. It made sense that she didn't get along well with Jennifer. Though I was initially appalled, living with her for a few days somehow made me envious of her lifestyle. She made her own decisions and lived as she pleased. In her, I saw a sense of freedom I had forgotten. "Let's have dinner together tonight. I'll cook." That day, I finished work on time, did some grocery shopping, and headed home. When I called out to Samantha through the door, a surprised "really" came from inside. Our cohabitation was meant for us to get to know each other, but we seldom had time together. For some reason, I wanted her to taste my cooking. Cooking has been my hobby since I was single. On days off, I used to prepare elaborate courses for Jennifer. I loved losing myself in cooking, forgetting about work. Tonight, I planned a little course meal. As I was preparing the appetizer, soup, and salad, Samantha peeked into the kitchen. "Michael, I didn't know you cooked. I thought work was all you ever thought about." She stood beside me, watching my cooking with a curious fascination. "Since you're watching, want to help?" "That's a different matter." Samantha smoothly dodged my request and laughed. We started talking bit by bit. Samantha said she never cooks. She usually relies on takeout or instant meals. If she craves something specific, she goes out to eat. She hates washing dishes and is not good at cleaning, making her a less than ideal bride, she joked. Come to think of it, Jennifer also struggled with household chores at the beginning of our marriage. Samantha's words made me reminisce about the early days with Jennifer. Initially, Jennifer couldn't manage household chores. She didn't even know how to use a washing machine. I found Jennifer irresistibly adorable when she blushed and said, "I'd only focused on my studies." It's best when each person does what they're good at. I believe we were truly a great couple. Of course, that makes sense. They never let Jennifer do anything other than study. By they, Samantha was referring to my in-laws. Whenever she mentioned her parents, her tone turned scornful. "I heard from Jennifer that things were tough after your brother passed away." Hearing this, Samantha suddenly looked up from her cooking, a surprised shift in her gaze towards me. Her face bore a complex expression I had never seen before. I heard she was suddenly switched to medical school. Her piercing gaze made me continue defensively, as if asking how much I knew. I think Jennifer was desperate to meet their expectations. Perhaps reminiscing about Jennifer, she spoke with a distant look in her eyes. Then she left the kitchen. She probably didn't want to continue this conversation any further. Minutes later, when the meal was ready and we sat down at the table, Samantha seemed back to her usual self. But there was a slight difference in the usual her. After tasting my cooking, she couldn't stop praising the meal and me. "I've never tasted such delicious food. Michael, you should quit being a doctor and become a chef instead." Her eyes sparkling, she showered both me and the meal with glowing praise. Initially, I was skeptical, thinking it might just be politeness, but as she quickly finished off the dishes, I became convinced she genuinely loved my cooking. After neatly consuming even the last dessert, Samantha smiled contentedly. "Thank you for the meal. Having a husband who's such a good cook, I envy Jennifer." She let out a giggle after saying something that took me aback. Now might be the time she would answer the question I've been wanting to ask. Gathering my courage, I decided to ask Samantha. "Why didn't you become a doctor, Samantha? Your family has always been full of doctors, hasn't it?" Samantha's smile faded as she narrowed her eyes slightly. She was silent for a moment, just looking into my eyes. I knew that if I looked away now, she wouldn't tell me anything. So, I kept my gaze fixed on hers. "I hate doctors," Samantha whispered softly, almost to herself. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "My brother felt the same. I think Jennifer did too, but we had no choice but to become doctors. Being a doctor is a profession that can save lives, and I respect and value their existence." However, Samantha went on to say that seeing her own father and relatives as doctors made her inevitably hate the profession. It was as if being anything other than a doctor meant you weren't a person, according to her parents and relatives. My brother and I were years apart in age. One day, he took me gambling, probably right after he received his first paycheck as a doctor. That day, her brother had lost terribly at first. But in the afternoon, with advice from Samantha, he managed to win back everything he had lost. That's when he said to me, "You have a talent for this, not medicine." Samantha was curious why her brother gambled with his first paycheck and asked him. He shyly replied, "I wanted to try something I've always wanted to do." Then he earnestly told Samantha, "Live your own life, not someone else's." That was the first time I felt like I really understood my brother's heart. He never wanted to be a doctor. The expectation to carry on the hospital's legacy was a burden to him. It didn't take long for the stress from others' expectations and jealousy to overwhelm her brother, who was more sensitive than most. When he passed away, people mourned the loss of Air more than the loss of my brother himself. She must have been reminiscing about those times. Anger flickered in Samantha's eyes. I remembered hearing from Jennifer that when her brother died, Samantha was the last one to leave his coffin, crying inconsolably. She had a bond with her brother that Jennifer never had. Jennifer became a victim of those people. Samantha said, looking straight at me. "I'm sure Jennifer met your parents' expectations, but I believe she was happy after she got married. Yet, stress and overwork led to this. I wonder if life with me was a burden for Jennifer. Heart failure due to stress and overwork. That's what the death certificate stated. I think I wasn't able to heal Jennifer. And I regret that." "Wait, Michael, you're misunderstanding something. I think Jennifer was happy to be married to you. After all, she often contacted me, someone she didn't get along with, to brag about you and gush about her married life." Samantha's words took me by surprise. I had no idea she boasted about me. It was those people who pushed Jennifer to the brink. Once again, Samantha referred to them with disdain, saying "those people." She then shared a truth unknown to me. It seems Jennifer was constantly pressured by her parents, asking her when will we have a grandchild, as if on a daily basis. They urged her to have a child quickly, so someone not of the Miller bloodline would spend less time at the helm of the hospital. They even went so far as to say that divorce was acceptable, or rather, encouraged, once she had a child. Samantha mentioned that Jennifer had confided this to her. Their display of a strained sisterly relationship was apparently a facade to deceive their parents. Samantha revealed she lived apart as a refuge for Jennifer in times of need. I can't believe they would go to such lengths. How selfish. I felt a growing disdain for James, the director. What did he think of his own daughter? "Michael, run away quickly. Escape before you become their prey," Samantha pleaded with me. "Jennifer had one request for me," she continued. "If anything happened to her, she wanted me to protect you in her stead." This was her way of repaying me for becoming a doctor and serving as Samantha's shield, as her parents wished. I was protected by Jennifer, so now I will protect the person Jennifer cherished," Samantha asserted with determination, and in her eyes, I saw a reflection of Jennifer. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Gratitude naturally spilled from my lips. Hearing my words, Samantha's face softened with relief. Days later, I submitted my resignation at the hospital. When Samantha and I entered the director's office together, James probably expected good news. He couldn't have imagined I would turn down the position of the next director. His disbelief was evident when we told him of my refusal to remarry Samantha and my decision to leave the hospital. He was literally breathless. So, this is what it means to be left breathless, I thought, observing the scene with a detached calm. "Did you finally realize that things won't always go your way?" Samantha said, her voice filled with genuine amusement. The director, at a loss for words, continued to open and close his mouth, pointing at me. He looked like a carp gasping for air in a polluted pond, a sight that evoked a sense of pity. I married Jennifer because I loved her, not because I loved this hospital or the Miller family. To hell with the position of the next director. At my words, Samantha burst into laughter, holding her stomach, while the director turned red-faced, looking as if he might faint. "Let's go, Michael. As I hesitated, wondering if I should call a nurse for about to faint James, Samantha firmly grabbed my hand. She pulled me towards the exit of the director's office. "You'll regret this. I'll never forgive you." Hearing the director's cries like the howl of a defeated dog behind us, I ran down the hospital corridors with Samantha. Passing by the head nurse, I managed to say, "Please check on the director," without stopping. This exhilarating feeling was a first in my life, bringing uncontrollable laughter from deep within. The moment we stepped outside the hospital, an unbelievably blue sky greeted us. It felt like a moment of liberation from all entanglements. "Michael, I have another request." Still facing forward while running ahead, she spoke in a loud voice, our hands clasped together. "What is it?" "Another request," I asked back loudly, caught up in the moment. "Would you enjoy a free life with me? I want to eat your cooking forever." Samantha shouted this as if proclaiming it to the sky. I was surprised but not displeased. "Even though I'm a doctor." "It's you, so it's fine. A profession is just like an option, right?" Samantha's words brought a surge of laughter. I think life with her would be full of surprises and constant laughter, with occasional disagreements and arguments, yet always with mutual respect. The clear blue sky seemed to promise just that. "We don't need useless employees here." The last words I heard from my boss, Kevin, as he smirked smugly, having succeeded in firing me, were filled with malice. "Understood. Today will be my goodbye to this company, but remember, Kevin, the dirty tricks you've played will eventually come back to haunt you. You'll reap what you've sown. Goodbye." With those final words, I left the company. The following week, Kevin would experience the revenge I had warned him about, in full measure. My name is Alex. I'm turning 28 this year. I was born as the eldest son in a very ordinary middle-class family in the suburbs of New York. As a kid, I loved bugs and spent a lot of time catching them in the neighborhood. I've always been laid back by nature, not really into competing or rushing things. Because of my easygoing and kind nature, I was often underestimated and used as a stepping stone by the mean kids and the slick ones since elementary school. But I never wanted to fight others just to come out on top. In middle school, I was an average student in every aspect, with no particular achievements in academics or clubs. I played basketball in high school as well, but since I was always losing in the first round of district tournaments in both junior high and high school, I never had the passionate experience of practicing hard to win a championship. It was just going with the flow, really, since I didn't have a special desire or love for basketball. However, there was one time in middle and high school when I felt truly alive and fulfilled. I loved music, and in middle school, I started playing the guitar as a hobby. By high school, I really wanted to form a band, so I secretly gathered members from within the school and managed to start the band I had always dreamed of. We rented a studio about twice a week for practice, and my passion for music meant I naturally put more effort into it, improving my guitar skills significantly. I also taught myself digital audio workstation software and gradually became capable of creating various songs and sounds on my PC. Then, in my senior year of high school, I got to perform on stage for the first time during the school festival. It was only about a 30-minute set of a few songs, but performing live with my band in front of an audience of over 1,000 people in the high school auditorium was an exhilarating experience. The audience was really into it, and for the first time, we as band members felt truly alive and immensely fulfilled. Although it was just a temporary band for high school, this experience was the first real success of my life, teaching me a valuable lesson and giving me confidence. Even someone like me, who seemed to fade into the background, could achieve great things if I really put my heart and soul into something. Afterwards, I attended a very average college, majoring in economics. I joined a music club hoping to start another band, but I didn't really click with the seniors and peers there and left soon after. As a result, I didn't engage in any music activities in college, and my campus life just drifted by with some meaningless club activities and part-time jobs. Of course, I didn't delve deeply into my studies either, only studying enough to get credits. Thus, my college life, spent aimlessly, along with the fact that I didn't attend a prestigious college, meant my job search was not very successful. Perhaps because I came from a small local college that was hardly known on a national level, it was difficult for me to even get on the hiring process of well-known companies. Moreover, I was really childish at the time, thinking the world was a bit optimistic, and I had no concrete vision of what I wanted to do or what type of job I wanted to get. So, naturally, all the major companies I applied to rejected me, and the only job offer I got was from Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc., a small to medium-sized enterprise with fewer than 200 employees. Given my circumstances, I couldn't afford to be choosy. After graduating, I reluctantly started working at Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc. However, the company was not just small, it was the epitome of a toxic workplace. Generally speaking, all departments were swamped with work and lacked the manpower to handle it. The company aimed to keep labor costs to a minimum, which meant the burden fell on each employee. The enormous amount of work, including late work and holiday work, became the norm in this classic toxic workplace. Not only was the company itself horrible, but to make matters worse, I was faced with an even more dire situation. Kevin, the general manager of the operations department, to which I was assigned and my direct boss, had the most horrible personality of all. Kevin's harsh treatment of his subordinates and his abusive language were unbearable. Even when the last train had gone and work was not finished, he would shout, "Stay overnight to finish it," or "Work through the night to get it done." Kevin showed no mercy, even to me when I was still new and not yet accustomed to the work. "Alex, you're especially useless among the newbies," or "Hurry up and finish this, you're so useless. We don't need trash employees like you here. Just quit already." I was bombarded with such abuse from Kevin from morning till night, leaving me physically and mentally exhausted. I can't go on like this. I'll really collapse if things continue this way. One day, reaching my mental limit and feeling a real sense of crisis, I seriously questioned myself for the first time in my life. Thinking back, I recognized that my lack of ambition during my college years, not studying hard, and just going through the motions in job hunting led me to this horrible company. Fueled by this regret, I pushed myself to the brink and pondered deeply. It was an incredibly difficult task, but for someone like me who had just gone with the flow all my life, it was an inevitable and essential self-examination that had to be done at some point. Should I continue this job? Will I just wear myself out and be crushed if I stay in this company? Should I quit? No, quitting now would feel like running away, and that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I feel like I need to persevere here before I can move on to the next thing. But at this rate, I'll just collapse. So, what do I do? After much agony and thought, I came to a conclusion. We need to aggressively promote business efficiency that doesn't rely on manpower, or else people will break down. For that, we need to develop a business system that can be optimized to the utmost. And probably, no one else would do it. So, the next steps became clear. It had to be me. I had no choice but to frantically study programming and system design on my own. Strangely, once I had a goal and direction, my mind became as calm as a still pond. And from that day, I began to study programming with single-minded focus. The passion I felt during that high school festival concert, my only real success in life, began to resurface within me. With genuine effort, Even someone unremarkable like me can achieve great results if I'm truly passionate about it, I convinced myself. Get that feeling of fulfillment back, Alex. I encouraged and chastised myself. Since then, I studied desperately in whatever spare time I could find. Starting from scratch was challenging, but having been involved in music, customizing composition software since my student days helped me transition into programming relatively smoothly. Still, it was an uphill battle for an absolute beginner to reach the level of building a system, and I failed repeatedly. However, my persistent efforts gradually began to bear fruit, and thanks to programming, I gradually became able to do a huge amount of work in a shorter amount of time. The pilot prototype operation system that I gradually developed helped the employees in the field around me and gradually won praise. Before I knew it, my reputation within the company skyrocketed. Eventually, over the course of a year, I managed to develop a comprehensive and versatile business operation system. And when this system was put into full swing, it was greeted with applause, saying that it would efficiently advance operations in all departments of the company, not to mention the ordering and order receiving system, and even the warehouse operations for inventory control. We then implemented this system with our clients and officially switched to a streamlined workflow that operates on this system. Clients and associates praised my system for making operations more efficient and easier to manage. Before I knew it, I had become the man of the hour within the company. However, not everyone was pleased with this. Kevin, my boss in the operations department, who has a horrible personality. Kevin, who hardly knew programming or even basic computer operations and mostly stuck to phones and apps, despised my work. Instead of relying on computers, you should make action by yourself. Relying on PCs and neglecting to develop communication skills makes you a useless piece of trash. This was the mantra I was tired of hearing from Kevin every day. Yet, Kevin's imposing and biased philosophy had prevailed in the operations department. However, it was clear that this philosophy would crumble in the face of the business operation system I had developed. Kevin was in trouble if the system made the way he conducted business fully transparent, because he had reprimanded his subordinates based solely on his position and career as the head of the operations department. The clarity of the operations exposed his unnecessary severity towards his employees, sparking fear that he might be the one to get fired. Damn it, Alex's unnecessary meddling is jeopardizing my position. Fuming, Kevin schemed to undermine me in any way he could. And so, his despicable plan was set into motion. It unfolded as follows. Kevin ordered me to go on a business trip because a client would entertain me at a certain spa resort hotel. Upon arrival, there were no clients to be seen, but I was escorted by the staff of the luxury hotel to a first-class spa service and a top-notch full-course dinner. Clueless, but still, the spa service was pleasant and heavenly, and the drinks and food were delicious, so I stayed one night as I was entertained and I went back to my office. Upon my return, I was blindsided by accusations from Kevin and his cronies that I had spent company expenses on fake business trip to splurge. It was all a setup. I was merely framed by Kevin's scheme to bring me down. By the time I figured out I had been thoroughly tricked, it was already too late, and Kevin, leading the charge, had called an emergency board meeting under the guise of denouncing my alleged misconduct. The meeting proceeded in the state of a trial in absentia without me, who was supposed to be on the agenda. In the end, Kevin's argument that an employee who causes such damage to the company should be expelled was accepted, and I was dismissed. In other words, I was fired. Upon my return to the office, Kevin called me in and told me I was fired. We don't need useless employees around here. I felt nothing but pure malice in Kevin's final words to me, but I didn't retort about the dismissal and simply responded. Understood. If you want me to quit so badly, I'll quit. Today will be my goodbye to this company. But remember, Kevin, the dirty tricks you've played will eventually come back to haunt you. You'll reap what you've sown. Goodbye." Kevin responded with a smug, sarcastic laugh, but I had already turned on my heel, walking out of Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc., where I had worked for several years. A week after my departure from the company, police officers suddenly swarmed the company headquarters. The employees were buzzing with questions like, "Why are the police here?" and "Did a colleague commit a crime?" creating a stir throughout the office. When the police entered the operations department and began to seize the work PCs, Kevin arrived in a frenzy. "Hey, what do you want? Don't interfere with our work. Do you even have a warrant?" Kevin confronted the officers, but one of them calmly replied, "It's a matter of patent infringement. A complaint has been filed. The business operations system this company is using belongs to Alex, but it has been used this week without permission or contract, infringing on patent rights. Hence, we are here to seize it. Cease using this system immediately." Indeed, the Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc. business system I developed was patented under my name, and I held all licensing rights. Unaware of this, Kevin had maneuvered my dismissal, arrogantly assuming there would be no repercussions. It was merely a matter of paying the piper. In a panic, Kevin called me directly, attempting to clarify. "Hey, Alex, this wasn't part of the deal. Why do you still hold the rights to this business system?" I coldly replied to Kevin, who was ranting on the phone. "Why? Because I built the entire system. It's only natural. I had the president's permission from the time I developed it. Using the system without my consent is illegal." Hearing this, Kevin finally seemed to grasp his disadvantage, yet continued to spout selfish and unreasonable demands. "Fine, but you've left the company. This business system has nothing to do with you now. Hand over the rights to us immediately." I answered, exasperated. "No, why should I hand over the rights to a system I painstakingly created? Over my dead body? Kevin, you said it yourself, didn't you? We don't need useless employees. Then, you surely don't need a system created by such an employee, right?" Hearing this and still trying to cling on in a pitiful manner on the phone, I cut Kevin off with a final ultimatum. "Kevin, you must reap what you sow, or you'll prove to be the most useless of all. Struggle all you like." Ignoring Kevin's further outbursts, I hung up. After being cut off, Kevin turned pale and collapsed to his knees. Eventually, Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc. had to formally compensate me for the patent infringement, but they never agreed to a license to use the system thereafter. The president and other directors were open to negotiating a licensing agreement for my system, but a majority faction led by Kevin, stubborn to the end, opposed using anything I developed. The inner workings of the company were so corrupt that Kevin became the head of the majority faction of the company. As for me, I went on to productize the versatile business system and founded my own company to manage its sales. Starting from scratch, the system quickly gained a positive reputation among client companies, attracting new customers one after another. Before long, my business took off. Furthermore, upon hearing that I had started my own company, employees from my previous company, Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc., began flocking to my company, expressing their desire to work with me and applying for jobs in droves. While the upper management at my previous company was corrupt, many of the people I worked with on the ground were earnest and capable. They were just exhausted and demotivated from being thoroughly exploited by the toxic workplace. I welcomed as many of my former colleagues as possible into my new company, turning them into my new team members. Thanks to them, my startup continued to grow rapidly, expanding into new ventures along the way. Meanwhile, after my departure, Midwest Industrial Solutions Inc. began losing its competent employees, causing operations across various departments to falter. To fill the gaps, they tried to keep things running by bringing in outsourced workers from staffing agencies, but it was originally a horrible company. The outsourced temporary staff also disliked the work environment, and they couldn't retain any personnel, leading to a rapid deterioration in performance. Eventually, losing major clients led to a dire situation, culminating in bankruptcy due to massive debts. Several former employees, now in a bind, came to my company seeking re-employment. I interviewed each person carefully, picked up as many as I could, and hired them as our employees. Among them, I frequently heard rumors about Kevin's current situation. Apparently, Kevin was desperately seeking re-employment, but his past mistreatment of others, including myself, had come back to haunt him, leaving him struggling to find a job. Well, it's probably what you'd call karma. The retribution for looking down on people, oppressing them, and exploiting them like slaves inevitably comes back to the perpetrator. Given Kevin's cunning nature, he might one day show up at my company with an innocent face, asking to be hired. Of course, I intend to turn him away at that time. But then again, even a villain like Kevin has his pride. I wonder if he'd rather turn to fraud than stoop so low as to ask me, whom he despises, for a job. Regardless, as a negative role model, Kevin has been a great influence on me. Now that I'm the president of my own company, I remind myself daily to learn from the example of someone like Kevin. Never see employees merely as labor, manage with empathy for each individual. This has become my conviction, etched into my heart from the miserable experiences of being oppressed and exploited every day by a horrible-hearted boss like Kevin at my former company. So far, everything is going smoothly with the company, but I'm sure there will be numerous challenges ahead. No matter how difficult the business situation becomes, becoming a manager who fires the employees without just cause or exploits them with unpaid overtime is out of the question. In this world, there's nothing more despicable than the wealthy who only look out for themselves and their families. No matter the circumstances, I'm determined to foster an organization that stands together with its employees, facing adversities head-on, and I'm passionate about creating a better working environment.